Let's call the regular council meeting of August 14th to order, please. Welcome everybody to the meeting tonight. I'd like to acknowledge and recognize that Fort Nelson is in the heart of the traditional territories of the Fort Nelson First Nation as well as the Prophet River First Nation. Recognize the treaty that belongs to both of us and recognize the rights within that treaty, and recognize the continued and lasting, enduring presence of the Métis Nation in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Are there any additions to tonight's agenda? Council? Staff?
Mayor, just yes, council availability for committee of the whole meetings.
Okay. So where can we put that under it? New business, I guess we'll call that 11.4. Availability. Anything else? Okay. Are there any public here? Is there any public on? Okay. Okay. Please. Ms. Vandersteen, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to thank staff for Admin Report 44, which is later on your agenda, and thank Council for your consideration of this report. The repayment of the CEBA loan is of huge concern right now for business, not just in Fort Nelson, but across the country, with the additional up to $20,000 debt that could be incurred on top of the existing loan. And business has just been hit particularly hard, not just with the fact that the loan has come due, but with all of the other increases and supply chain shortages and minimum wage increase and interest rate increases. It's kind of just been never ending since COVID. So just wanted to take a minute and thank you for your consideration of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Adoption of the agenda as amended, please. Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are two council sets of minutes to adopt from the Regional Council meeting on July the 10th and the Special Regional Council meeting of July the 19th. Move for adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Souls. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? It's carried. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? Council? Staff? No? Okay. Okay, so the first order of business is a proclamation for Rail Safety Week. I have the proclamation here. Well, I guess my personal policy about signing these on my own is that they need to be doing something inside the community. You know, some kind of an event that brings awareness to whatever it is they're trying to proclaim, and if not, then my personal policy, I guess, is to bring it to council to see whether or not council would like to proclaim whatever the group is looking to proclaim. So I did get an email from CN asking us, reminding me that they'd like us to put this on the agenda. I sent a little email back saying, you know, are you planning on doing anything in the community for Rail Safety Week? And essentially they wrote back and said, well, we'll be happy to put something on your website if you're okay with that. So it's up to you. What would you like? Any discussion?
I just wonder if there's an opportunity here to actually refuse to proclaim this and make it public that we do, based on the unwillingness of CN to communicate with us what their intentions are, or something along that line. Because they, like we all know that during the Donny Creek fire, one of the bridges burned out from under it. So that's also, there's been zero information back from CN on what their intentions are with that. So we can commend them for being the safest we've ever had rail in our community for the last few months since it hasn't operated. But at the same time, I think the lack of proclaiming this actually is an opportunity to send a message.
I will say that email did include a one-liner saying that the bridge repair work is still at RFP. So there was a note there saying that it's at RFP. So something is going forward. Don't know exactly what, some type of a bridge repair. But it's been 6 weeks since we've had an update with respect to, now that the fire has sort of died down, I guess they potentially have an opportunity to check the actual rail line itself, right? They did do some work, but yeah, we should be expecting some kind of it would send a message, I'm sure, if we did not proclaim this, but it's up to you guys.
I mean, personally, I feel the best way to have rail safety is to upgrade your infrastructure and maintain your railway. So if we're not seeing that, then I don't feel comfortable making a proclamation until I can see some improvements in our railway.
Is there anybody that's prepared to make a motion with respect? Seeing none, I will move on to the next order of business. Thank you very much. The next order of business is 8.1 is a petition from Leah and Associates with respect to the detailed design for Andy Bailey Regional Park. And I believe we have a staff representative here to talk to us. Jonathan, the microphone is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as detailed in Admin Report 41-23, we've been working with Leah and Associates on the detailed design improvements for Andy Bailey Regional Campground. Andy Bailey was identified as one of the parks that we have that is needing some accessibility upgrades. So with that, we want to upgrade that to meet the current and future needs of the residents in line with Council's goals to provide a high quality of life for its residents. From community engagement sessions, there were also additional needs identified for Andy Bailey that Lee's is working to incorporate into the design. Through the destination or the BC Destination Development Fund, we were able to secure grant funding for the accessibility upgrades. So at this point, we are pleased to invite Heidi Redmond from Lee's and Associates to present you with the 50% progress of the detailed design.
Thank you, Jonathan. Would you like me to share my screen or do you have the presentation up there?
We have the presentation. I can pull it up.
Okay.
To step away from that conversation now.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Heidi Redmond, Principal and Landscape Architect with Lees and Associates Landscape Architects and Planners. I'm delighted to be here this evening to provide a progress update on the detailed design for improvements at Andy Bailey Regional Park and Campground. Next slide. Our agenda includes introductions, project overview, and a summary of accessible improvements, a recap of grant funding goals and budget, and next steps. If there are any burning questions during the presentation, please chime in. Otherwise, we'll have time for questions at the end. Our team includes myself, landscape architect, Patrick Beach, the project manager, Ivy Smith, providing project support and accessibility expertise. In addition, our subconsultant McElhaney has provided topographic survey services for the detailed design. Next slide. The overall project objective is to increase accessibility in all aspects of the park. Andy Bailey Regional Park is currently not developed for accessibility needs. Upgrades are required to the infrastructure, including outhouses and campsites. The beach and lake are not accessible to all users, and there has been a public request for a bug shelter. There are a couple of key definitions that are worth touching on in the context of the project. With respect to active mobility design in this project, accessibility means that people regardless of age, size, ability, or disability are able to access, experience, and use the features and facilities. Barrier refers to a feature of a site, structure, technology, or space that may prevent or limit someone's ability to fully participate in that designed environment. Today's presentation provides an update to Council on 50% completion of the detailed design. The intention is to start construction in the spring of 2024 and progress to full completion in the fall of 2024. Work is very much progressing, and we are meeting with Northern Rockies staff every other week. Next slide. Wildwood Environmental has been retained to provide environmental permits, as well as any environmental monitoring required by the province during construction. Work completed to date includes an environmental site visit in June by the Wildwood biologist to confirm habitat details. They identified grassy clearings that would be appropriate for walk-in tent site development, and no concerns raised to date with regard to the location of the proposed dock or other accessibility improvements. Next slide. The conceptual design completed last year included 2 rounds of engagement. In July of 2022, we had a community pop-up event with display boards as well as an online survey. At that time, we got a sense of how people use Andy Bailey Park, what barriers that they encounter, and gathered ideas for accessibility improvements and what the community would like to see in the future. In September of last year, we hosted another community pop-up as part of the Street Festival, as well as an online survey. At this time, we presented 2 concept options for improvements at Andy Bailey Park and confirmed the community priorities. The engagement process also included First Nations outreach. The project was introduced by Northern Rockies staff during in-person conversations with representatives from Fort Nelson First Nation and Prophet River First Nation. And staff also reached out in person to the Northern Rockies Aboriginal Women's Society and the Fort Nelson Aboriginal Friendship Society. Next slide. What we heard results were incorporated into the final concept presented to Council in January and continue to be incorporated into the detailed design. Top priorities for improvement identified by the community included improve the beach area, including accessible water entry point, accessible dock and boat launch, shade, shelter from bugs. Bugs were one of the main issues and barriers noted by the community using Andy Bailey Park. Improve washrooms, including accessible toilets and change rooms, and improve camping areas to make them accessible. Connections to other campground amenities such as campsites, outhouses, and the beach was also mentioned. Next, I will walk through how we are responding to these community priorities and provide a summary of the key accessibility improvements that are being designed for the park. First is improving camping areas, highlighted here in green. Campsite diversity is being expanded to accommodate a wider range of camping styles enjoyed by locals and travelers. The Alaska Highway sees the full gamut of visitors from ultralight motorcycles to fully fitted out RV units. Increasing campsite diversity is a key element of making the campground more inclusive and accessible to a range of users. Pull-through RV campsites. We are renovating 2 sites on the upper bench to be pull-through RV sites, which are larger sites that allow for RVs to pull in and drive out with no backing up required. Group campsites. We are maintaining and improving the 6 RV sites along the lower bench with views to the water. These could be used for group camping or as single sites. They have room for 2 to 3 vehicles and 2 camping spots. Single back-in campsites. We are adding 2 new single back-in sites. These allow for a single vehicle or RVs to back in. These sites will be on the upper bench and are smaller and more private. And finally, walk-in campsites. For the more adventurous, we are adding 4 new walk-in sites. These sites have designated parking and a short accessible path that leads to the lakefront campsites for tenting. Campsite amenities such as fire pits and accessible picnic tables are being specified with local fabricators wherever possible. Next slide. We are addressing accessible movement and circulation throughout the park with improvements to pathways and accessible parking. Accessible movement improvements include installation of accessible pathways, accessible parking stalls, accessible outhouses, and site furnishings. New signage throughout the park will include an updated entry kiosk and a new kiosk at the beginning of Andy Bailey Road. Next slide. Other specific accessibility items include improvements to water experiences and an accessible playground. Improved water experiences include a new floating dock. Next slide. Okay, just skip ahead one more. Go forward one more, please. Okay. Other specific accessibility items include improvements to water experiences and an accessible play area. Next slide. Improved water experiences will include a new floating dock with accessible personal watercraft launch, a replenished beach sand area with an accessible beach mat, an accessible play area with sensory and imaginative play features. Next slide. As proposed in the concept plan, we are also planning a screened-in bug shelter for picnicking families, school groups, and other users. This was a frequent request during the engagement. This will also support increased fall and winter use of the site with provision of a wood stove and window coverings. Next slide. The project is supported by grants from the Active Transportation Fund, which covered the concept phase, and the BC Destination Development Fund for the detailed design and construction phases. Further to the goals of the grant funding, improvements focus on enhancing accessibility at the park while also revitalizing this important community asset and piece of tourism infrastructure. Next slide. As Jonathan mentioned, specific accessibility items are being addressed as a condition of the grant funding. Additional needs were identified through the community engagement sessions. Costs for these will be covered as a capital request or through other funding sources. Next slide. At the 50% stage, construction costs are estimated to be around $900,000. $538,000 will be covered by the BC Destination Fund grant. Additional funding for the remaining $364,000 will be presented as a capital request in 2024, while staff also continue to explore additional grant opportunities. The next step for this project will be finalizing the design work. Our team will be preparing 95% detailed design package, including construction drawings, technical specifications, and a cost estimate. Next slide. In conclusion, we hope that this detailed design will assist the regional municipality in making changes to reduce barriers and increase accessibility at Andy Bailey Park, and put the park onto the accessibility map for both residents and visitors to the region. By improving Andy Bailey Park for accessibility, the site will be improved for the community as a whole. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heidi. Definitely appreciate it. I know several of us, or if not all of us, are very excited about the work that you're all doing down there. I know it's at a pretty high level, still 50%. It'll be very interesting once you get down to I think the next step is 95% completion. So I don't have any questions. I'm just really happy to see this progressing. So are there any other council members who have questions or comments?
Yeah. I just when you get to the technical designs, I just wonder if it's part of the measuring of if a factor in the technical designing is to create structures that are somewhat resistant to vandalism. Just given that we have a history, that's a really remote spot for us. And every attempt at having part of having campground in that area has resulted, every time we've made a difference to the park in the past, one way or another, we've had a lot of things trashed. And so just, is that a factor? Is that something that you could consider?
Through the chair, that's a good question and point. It is something that's come up at our discussions with staff. And we are looking at using materials such as concrete for picnic tables, using steel or concrete mix of those materials for the outhouses as well, so that they'll be more vandal resistant and also lower maintenance over time.
How far along are you in the playground? Like, is that coming up in the next update, or do you have anything that you can add to the playground that's going in?
Yeah, at this point, we've presented some options. Thanks for the question through the chair. We've presented some options for play features to staff. These include an accessible play table, as well as some sensory play, such as musical chimes. So those are things that we're discussing with staff and what we can include within the budget that's covered by the grant.
Thanks.
Can you remind me how many overnight campsites are planned? I just don't recall.
Through the chair, we have, would you like to take that, Jonathan?
I was going to say, I believe it's 14 with vehicle access and then 4 walk-in as well.
So 20 potential sites. Do we see regular use of those now? Do we have any there now? Because I haven't been out there yet, so I don't know if people are. When I was there, it was just a beach years ago. So I know you've come a long ways there. And I guess what I'm getting at with respect to the vandalism, is there opportunity that this will be eventually a manned site?
Currently,
Is everybody talking about that?
Currently, right now, we have 12 camping sites out there, all vehicle access, although you could tent on the beach or in the bush, so it shows. With the additional sites, it will bring that level up. There are times when we do find that for a few of the events, it is quite full. The fishing derby that the Elks Club puts on is the biggest one probably. And then there are some things, grad generally every year has a grad camp out there, and a few other things like that. Outside of that, there is some tourist traffic and regular weekend type use, but I wouldn't say it is always full. It is somewhat sporadic, weather dependent, all that kind of thing.
So we're watching the potential business case for it to be a site where there's an attendant. Okay, good. Good, thanks. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Jonathan, for your report. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work. We're interested to see. Did the report say September, October for the next report?
The detailed design for 95% should be done at the end of August, so should be about September, October.
Okay,
I'll come back here and present that to you, and finalize it up shortly after that.
perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to admin report number 42, which is the Parker Lake Recreation Area Survey results. For information, it's there if there's any comments or questions for staff. I think it's really good that we saw as many people respond, and they all were, they gave a very, very consistent message, I think, with respect to the use and the fact that people would like to see that. Is there any worry that it's going to take away from Andy Bailey Park if we do something? No, everybody's comfortable that both of them will be good. Well, it'll be interesting to see what Rec Sites and Trails BC does with this report. So is there what's the next step? I'm drawing a blank as to whether or not that was in the report.
It says staff have met with RSTBC to review and discuss the survey results. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Let's see it. Yes, please.
So my only comment on both both parks is, we had talked quite a while ago, and I think maybe it becomes part of our strategic planning session of pack in, pack out. Because I've been at Parker Lake on a Sunday after the kids have been out there. But to get away from allowing people to bring lunch and drinks and all that kind of stuff in and then just leave it there. I think all of our parks should be pack in, pack out. And when I was working with the trail maintenance crew, that we had talked about it just on the side, and they're very supportive of it. So any parks from where our municipality is responsible for, whether it's from Fort Nelson to Toad River or wherever, but really running that campaign of pack in, pack out.
Instead of putting garbage cans there?
We put limited garbage cans, right? So that everybody gets in I think Tofino has a pack in, pack out on all of their walking trails in their systems. So I think looking at that option and really promoting that with our recycle program and what are we as a municipality? We really look after the environment, one, by packing in, packing out, recycling, farms. And, yeah.
Yeah, it's an idea for staff when they talk to, because that's what I get from the next steps, right? Is that you're talking with rec sites and Trails BC and this is really their baby, right? So.
We are. So one of the things that we heard loud and clear from the survey was that people would like to see a garbage container at Parker Lake. Rec sites and trails as a whole generally don't have garbage containers at their rec sites. However, based on what we heard from the community, they are willing to entertain having a bear-proof garbage receptacle there on a pilot project basis. So a 1-year term to see how it goes. We're just working on logistics with them of what that might look like as far as who's going to be responsible for emptying the garbage, who's going to be placing the garbage can there, and that sort of thing. So where we left it off with Rec Sites and Trails was going to reach out to Public Service and Procurement Canada to see if they'd be willing to include that in their maintenance contract, to have somebody go in and empty that out. And we're meeting with them this week to talk about it further.
Is there any talk about fixing the parking lot that's filled with big, huge holes?
So we didn't talk about that specifically, although I understand we do have an authorization with the province to maintain the road, which I think may include the parking lot. So I can follow up with Ann on that and see if that's actually included. But we didn't talk specifically about that.
The road is in wonderful shape, so I think it's Radar Road that's doing it. I don't know, but the road itself, like you can like now drive 70 kilometers an hour on it and not worry about hitting your head on the top of your vehicle, but the parking lot is not in good shape.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, the next order of business is 9.3 Administration Report 43 23, which is the BC Hydro Public Electric Vehicle Fast Charging Network Plan follow-up.
Well, good evening, Mayor and councillors. Joey Can on from BC Hydro. Okay, perfect. So Joey Can is on from BC Hydro. If council has any specific questions for BC Hydro, then he's more than happy to answer them. The report in front of you just basically summarizes the conversations that we've been having since beginning in April around the BC Hydro Fast Charging Network Plan. Since those conversations were initiated, regional councils expressed a variety of different ideas around what a vehicle or electric vehicle charging station might look like in Fort Nelson on municipal property, as well as looking at potential opportunities on private land and brownfield sites. So the report in front of you summarizes some information around the municipal owned properties In attachment 1, you'll see the current proposal made by BC Hydro is to install 2 separate charging infrastructure stations, one located at Millennium Park, which would require a new entrance, which BC Hydro is willing to cover the cost of, as well as a second charging installation located in the east parking lot of the Recreation Center. BC Hydro considered this to be somewhat of a concession so that there would be charging stations at both ends of town, with the recreation site one being a little bit closer to the downtown core area, and include level 2 charging. In addition, a municipal owned property, there's some information in the report related to 5307 50th Avenue South, which is our vacant lot next door, currently being used by the Phoenix Theatre Management Society as a drive-in theater. Although BC Hydro contends that this site is still viable for an electric vehicle charging station, they're not wanting to create conflict with current uses and have removed that from the current proposal. The report also provides information around in attachment 2 about various brownfield sites that we've investigated. There aren't too many that are actually available right now for purchase. There have been some sales in town recently of brownfield sites or previous brownfield sites. But that information is summarized in attachment 2. In summary, BC Hydro has indicated that they would like to confirm site location by mid-September. And this information is being provided to council for a decision on the 2 sites proposed in the report. Thank you.
Questions for Lisa or the BC Hydro representative? I'm sorry, is it Joe? Joe.
Yeah, it's Joey here, and good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Okay, so I have go ahead. Just a clarification. Are we installing level 3 chargers, the DC fast charger? That's a level 3 charger. Is that going to be at both locations, proposed locations?
Yeah, for sure. So the one over by Millennium Park will be 2 DC fast chargers, 4 port total. And likewise, over at the rec center, we're looking to propose 1 DC fast charger and 4 level 2 chargers. So for that, I guess on the west side of town, you'd be able to get 6 charge ports out of that setup.
Thank you.
So Joe, I'd like to talk to you about 5307 50th and your decision to pull that off. You still see that it's a viable opportunity. Have you decided not to move forward, or if we decided that that's the piece of property we wanted these charging stations on, that you would continue there?
At this point, we are willing to consider all options, but as I had noted to Lisa, we really don't want to create conflict in the area. So I understand there's a good use case for the current theater. So I'm not saying that we can't do it, but certainly we would like to minimize conflict wherever we can. So we can still look at it, provided that it won't cause more trouble.
If it can be shown to be compatible and that council generally agrees that it's compatible use, would you consider it?
At this point, I'll say yes, just because we're still open to options. But again, that would be subjected to sort of the approval by the various council members. So if the council believes that it's a good location, we'll definitely investigate a little bit more. But as of right now, we understand there's some pushback with the current location. So we don't want to cause issues where we don't want to. But if there's a strong desire for it, we'll take a closer look at it.
Great. Any other comments, please?
Yeah, I cannot support reducing our parking capabilities at the rec center east parking lot. I don't think that there's any of us here that haven't been at the rec center when you got a Bonds field on, you got hockey, just even hockey, but hockey tournaments, you got something going on in the community hall. all parking spots are in that parking lot every Saturday, every Sunday, and almost every night after 5 o'clock. There are few parking spots, few and far between. So I would not be in support of using any of the Recreation Center East parking lot. That said, if we were looking at that overflow parking, you know, where the visitors center is on that side, and then we have our regular parking lot, and then the gravel overflow parking, that could be an option that I could support, but not as it's written here.
I tend to agree with those comments, and I can't support Millennium Park because I really don't feel that it fits with the downtown revitalization plan and ideas that that we've been putting together to try to draw people, whether it's locals or people off the highway, into that central core of the downtown. Maybe absent of businesses now, but if we're going to have any kind of vision in the future with respect to trying to draw business activities back into this core, you know, I'm sure the nation would like to see the Fort Hotel complex moved into a, you know, a much more used facility from a business perspective. You know, I think there's opportunities when you start constructing some of the ideas with respect to the downtown core, that there's an opportunity if this was more centered to the community for people to use those trails walking both way, and it would put them in front of many more businesses than down there at Millennium Park. Although there are a few businesses there's no doubt about it. I think the walking radius that people might use for the amount of time that it takes them to charge their vehicle would put them in proximity to very few businesses that could benefit from this core facility being put in the community. So for me, and I'll come back to 5307 South 50th, is it's centralized. And I do believe that there's compatible use. If you were to please look at page 18 of 51, the photograph, which is Millennial Park. But if you just stick with me for a sec and open your mind to that photograph, and if you look at that building and you put this same photograph onto the parking lot at 5307 50th, and you pretend that that square building that's actually a pump house at Millennium Park, but if that square building is actually the the projection unit in this parking lot, you'll see that the amount of actual space, that's because those two properties are close to the same size, that Millennial Park will sit on that property over there. You'll see that there's actually very little space taken up by this facility. And if that's the projection building and the bottom of the picture is this building that's got the screen on it, if you even slid those parking units a little bit more to the west, it's not even you can't even see the screen from there. So I think there is compatible uses. I think for the hours that we are using the lot, the site, for screening of movies, I think there's a compatible use. And for an organization that has a temporary use permit to start dictating long-term vision and planning to the municipality, I think just doesn't fit with good long-term planning and use of that downtown core, based on the fact that we spent an awful lot of money on a project that tried to put people in the downtown core. And I think this is long-term. It's an investment in a long-term facility that will be basic infrastructure in the future. It's not right now, but it will be in the future. Basic infrastructure in municipalities. To put it in a much more centralized location, I think would be better for the community in the long run. And I do believe that it can be compatible and it can sit on that site with very limited conflict with the Phoenix Theaters drive-in, which is on a temporary use permit. Please.
I don't even know where Millennium Park is, for one.
Right across the street from Dan's Pub.
Okay, yeah. But we have so many properties that are in town that are just ugly space. Like, why can't we use a piece of property that is not used already? I don't know what the answer was about the Bank of Nova Scotia property. You know, there's property in between the school district and the family services that's sitting empty. There's all these gas stations that are empty. There has to be a spot in Fort Nelson that is accessible, functional, not disrupting anything, empty property that could be used for something else.
The difference is we don't own them.
Well, we could buy them. And the other question I have is how has there been a study on how many people are going to use these? Do we have charging stations now that we can kind of monitor of how much use are these going to get?
So
At this,
oh, sorry, Joey, I can kind of speak to what we currently have, which is one level 2 charging station. And in March, we had 3 unique users. In April, we had 7. In May, we had 3. In June, we had 5. In July, we had 7. However, with the changes that are coming to the legislation around zero emission vehicles, we will see an increase. That's what we're currently seeing, though, is fairly low use, but I'm anticipating there will be an increase. Sorry, Joey, go ahead.
yeah, no, thanks. Maybe just to further to that, perhaps right now there's not a proper rollout of infrastructure to facilitate vehicles looking to do a longer drive. But you know, it is the provincial government basically said, you know, we need to have the major highway corridors electrified by next year, and we're going to be building charging stations from Fort St. John up to Fort Nelson and also further. So as we roll out these infrastructure, we anticipate vehicles will eventually roll in, and as Lisa also pointed out, the legislation also suggests that, you know, zero emission vehicles will only increase going forward. So we do anticipate you know, an uptake of use here going forward. So to your point, you know, perhaps not right now, but as you build them, people will come.
So I have one more question on that. So electric vehicles, the ones that are in town now, we have so many problems with because they don't operate in the winter. Like, if the weather is too cold for electric vehicles to operate efficiently year round up here. So are these really functional infrastructure that we're putting in, considering the amount of use they're going to be used? And our community right now appreciates what we already have. So I don't like the idea of disrupting what we already have for such limited use that's not even going to be functional year round.
Joey, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, so you know, you're right about you know, in the winter, electric vehicles may see a drop in range because of you know, the drop in temperature. But you know, we are seeing, like I say, it's an uptake in electric vehicles, you know, right now and into the future. So, you know, I personally, my belief is that, you know, the vision should be a little bit more long term. So, you know, as you know, you hear Ford, they've got electric truck on the road now, and sooner or later Chevy's going to have one, and GMC is going to have one. So it's the market mix is changing, and it would be advantageous to have these infrastructures in place to support the change in market. So again, the speed might not be quick at this point, but we are seeing a change in the market just with how things are going. So I'll just keep it at that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roper, please.
I just want to go on the record to disagree with the mayor's comments about compatibility use with the Phoenix Cedar Drive. And there's also another, a far-reaching plan for a facility expansion that would be completely in line with any revitalization plans in Fort Nelson and the interests of the community. I think the language you used about the management society dictating, I think that was wrong to use. I think you're misrepresenting the situation. So I'm pleased to see that BC Hydro has removed that option, but I would hope that the town would follow suit. Thank you.
I find it fascinating to sit at a table with five of us that have five different takes on this, and it's great. This is good because it's good discussion. I actually appreciate the fact that this is divided, that the presentation that BC Hydro brought is divided into two zones. I actually think that the Millennium Park area is actually a residential charging station, because that's actually part of our residential part of our community. It would be a service point for people who live right in that area. The bulk of our community do live in that area from a residential point of view. And I think there will be some uptake in the electrical vehicle from local people. Thank you. I know, John, you're one of them that is doing that in the case. And I see that having value. I also see from a downtown revitalization point or accessibility to local downtown amenities while charging. I'm not really familiar with fast chargers. We haven't seen them here. So does a person normally sit in their car while they fast charge? Do they get out and go for a walk? So that question is because of, I also don't agree that it's a good idea to take up parking spaces in the other end of town at the rec center. However, if we can find a spot right at the rec center for the second charging spot, I think that's the best of both worlds, simply because the crown jewel of our tourism eye openers is the rec center itself. And so I was thinking about the other end of the parking lot in the lamplighters yard, because it's rarely used on a daily basis. That parking lot never fills up. It could be, you could have those charging stations just a very few short distance from where they are right now, and have an access road right into the back of the parking, that existing parking, without it messing up any parking. Anyway, I'd have to show you on the map. Okay. The thing is, I'm not looking so much specific. I'm looking at the idea that if we find a spot close to the rec center, I think that we're getting the best of both worlds, because the rec center will pull the traveling public into that charging station, and the one on the other end will pull the local people into the local charging.
May I?
Please.
So what I'm hearing then is you're not as concerned with having it in the central downtown core. Okay, so
Yes.
for example, the old Petro-Canada lot. It's on the chart that they gave us. It says further information being sought. So it's one lot away from IGA. That is like the center of
That's
the
true.
current
Center.
downtown core and the proposed downtown core. So instead of having two, could we not have one larger one being centrally located? Those people that are interested in going to the theater could do that, going to restaurants, the limited shopping that we do have, and it still is within walking distance of the rec center. I know we don't own it, but I would be interested in seeking further information. And I'm a little discouraged that BC Hydro is putting the pressure of by September 15th or whatever that date was, or what happens then? If we can't come to consensus by mid-September, does that mean Hydro is going to do their own thing? Or I think it's like what we're hearing throughout the 3 meetings that we've had discussing this is that council is conflicted. Not conflicted, sorry. We all have separate ideas. And so I think in order to come up with the best possible solution, but hopefully by consensus, is that takes time. So I hope that BC Hydro would remove that pressure of having to do it by a specific date.
Yeah, thanks. That was going to be my next question to Joe is, why does it have to be on a municipal piece of property? Number one, and what happens if we say thanks, but no thanks? We can't come to an agreement, and so it's up to you to buy your own piece of property. And because the other side of this is I don't think it's our responsibility to buy a piece of property for this. So Joe, in generality, I'm throwing that out there to find. I know it's an extreme view, but I'm throwing it out there to you to find out what your option would be if we just said no thanks.
Oh, no, thanks. And those are great questions. I don't take it as being a little bit, trying to get an understanding. Just to be transparent with our approach here. So the municipality of Fort Nelson is one of 3 hosts that we're exploring in the area. The other 2 hosts that we're in active discussions with is the Red Apple store as well as the IGA store. So again, the proposal for those 2 are a little bit different. What we're proposing here with the municipality is 2 sites with 4 chargers on both ends of town, whereas the options with the 2 other hosts are a little bit more reduced in scope. But that's not to say we're not pursuing all options. And the reason for this, the urgency as to why we need to beat September as a deadline is that it's going to take a lot of time here to figure out the detailed design, and we have a number of stations in queue here to be designed for to be ready for construction next year. Hence the urgency around securing tenure with whether it's the municipality or other private host. We do want to just make sure that there's enough time for procurement, for detailed design, and for construction to take place as soon as we're able to break ground next year. So again, that we're not trying to put you guys on the spot, but I just do want to recognize that there is a little bit of sense of urgency to make sure that there's enough time padded into the schedule to make sure that we can get these things rolled out by summer of next year. So hopefully those 2 points are addressed. I do just want to be transparent with what we're working with here, and that is we're also in active discussions with the Red Apple as well as the IGA store.
I think that's great news.
Both wonderful solutions, so we can stop wasting our time.
Yeah, I think that's great. I thought we were the only game on the block, and so that was putting some pressure on it. So yeah, I realized it was there, but it's so all right, well.
Yeah, and I just want to maybe send the message home one more time is that the setup that we're proposing here for the municipality of Fort Nelson is a little bit larger in scale. So just by port counts alone, it's more than what the other 2 hosts will be able to provide. So I just maybe add that as the cherry on top of the pudding here to say, if there is interest in working with us, the scale for this project will be a little bit bigger, and I think it'll benefit all users in town, whereas the other 2 stations are just going to be a little bit more limited in scope, but closer to the respective businesses.
So there might be an opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Sauce. Okay. There might be an opportunity then to, in fact, do something at the rec center that currently doesn't remove any parking spots. And then you would still be in talks with the businesses, whether it's Red Apple or IGA, both central in the community. Could that be an option?
At this point, no. We're only looking to secure a tenure here with 1 host in town for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
So, but however, that's not to say in the future when things pick up and expansion is required, we won't circulate back to you know, the host that we've had discussions in the past. But you know, at this point, you know, I'll keep it as all options are on the table, but recognizing time is of, you know, importance here. We do want to have things confirmed. And again, the September deadline is not unique to Fort Nelson. We've given the IGA store as well as Red Apple store host very similar sort of deadlines to work with. So we're evaluating everyone equally.
Well, I don't want to compete with either of those proposals, so.
Yeah, we have one more meeting before the middle of September. One more meeting. So I think we should defer that. We should let the other two councillors who are on the council who are not aware. I don't think of the, well, if they read the report, I guess they'd be aware of this information. So I'm comfortable with that as if everybody else is. I don't know that we're ready to make a decision ourselves. We're so far apart.
So I guess from staff, what will you need to make a decision like that I'm not providing, because I don't know what else to provide?
Oh, I don't think you need to provide anything.
Okay.
From my perspective, the two sites that they're dealing with the private industry, it suits my needs.
Okay.
And I just want the other councillors to know, to give them an opportunity to have their input. I don't know, the three of you haven't made comment with respect to whether you think, you know, the private entity is something that we would prefer in our community. But I think there's no harm in waiting until the next meeting to make the final decision. Do everybody agree? All right. So we won't do anything with this report. There's no motion on the floor, so there's no reason to defer.
Maybe we just like us to bring the existing report back to the next
Bring the
meeting as
existing
is
report back in
for the
September, whatever it is.
September meeting.
September meeting.
You bet.
Okay,
Great. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, page 22, 9.4 is Administrative Report 4423, which is a request for support for the extension of the CEBA repayment deadline. Is there a member of staff that would like to speak to this? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Krista, on the line. Krista, would you like to speak to this, please?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this has come forward as just an opportunity where Council, if they wish, can show some extra support. It's come up through conversations with our local Chamber of Commerce, as well as just through a lot of different news releases from tourism industry associations to Canadian Chamber. And then there is a letter that is linked in the report that's been signed by many different chambers and associations across Canada. So just bringing it forward for consideration.
I'll just add that at the last Chamber of Commerce meeting that I went to, unfortunately, they didn't have quorum, but there was a discussion about this. And I liked, you know, the idea that this is going to both the government and the opposition. Because if you've kind of been watching it, the opposition have been hitting the government up a little bit about, you know, trying to get this money recovered, right? So, and then the government side, they're trying to recover it and they're getting some pressure to recover it. But I agree that generally it's creating an issue for some businesses who aren't fully recovered from the pandemic to be in a position to be pay back the full 20,000 if that's what they took. And so I believe that they're on the right track with respect to asking for an extension. I don't think they're asking for businesses to be forgiven, except for that portion that they would have been forgiven. It's just the portion they were expected to pay back. So I'd like to send a letter. Councillor Souls?
Just a reminder that not all businesses took this. There's quite a number that didn't because they could smell a rat. And I think that the issue, yeah, well, I think that's colloquial language, but anyway, I think that the issue of extending it as an extension in the repayment has some merit because it doesn't change the idea at all. if it was other than just an extension, I wouldn't support it. But from an extension point of view, I can see supporting about what kind of an extension would we think is appropriate for extending it. That's
Yeah, the chamber never discussed that. I think they were just looking to get the government and the opposition to recognize that an extension is necessary for a lot of businesses in the country. So we didn't talk about what that time frame would look like. And Krista, was there anything that you came across that sort of indicated what that extension, the amount of time for that extension?
Yeah, no, not in what I've encountered. And I don't personally think that we're in, or at least I'm not in a state to know all of those intricacies. And I would think that the letter would be more around that we want them to open it up for discussion and really consider an extension or some sort of other creative process to allow businesses that can't pay it back right this second to have a little bit more time. But I don't know what the actual solution should be, but that we do want them to consider it.
Yeah, that's for the federal government to figure out, I guess, politically what that looks like. What the council's wishes? I'm sorry? Oh, Bev's hands up. I'm sorry. If we have a motion to allow Ms. Bev to participate, we can do that. Moved by Councillor Sol, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vandersteen. That's confusing for me. Bev, would you like to speak?
It's confusing for me as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that's kind of where I wanted to go with it. And actually, Krista expressed it fairly eloquently. I don't know exactly what we're calling for. We've had CFIB, Canadian Chamber, BC Chamber, and several other tourism industry organizations all call on the federal government to extend the CEBA deadline. The problem with it is we have businesses that took out either $30,000 or $40,000 with the idea of the forgivable $10,000 or $20,000. The problem with the December 31st deadline is because that $10,000 or $20,000 then becomes added to the loan if they're unable to pay it back. And our hope is that the federal government will come up with a creative way, maybe to incentivize those businesses that can pay it back to do so, so that some of those monies start going back into the federal coffers, but give those businesses through that have had that COVID hit, and then the minimum wage hit, and then interest rate hikes hit. And then in British Columbia, we've had the employer's health tax and a number of other things, as well as supply chain issues. And they just haven't been able to recover. So providing them with a little bit of flexibility or grace, if you will, to move forward without that additional $10,000 or $20,000 of debt added to their bottom line, which they may or may not be able to survive. Thanks so much for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. What are council's wishes?
I would make the motion that a letter be written to further support the Fort Nelson and District Chamber of Commerce and other associations in their request for the federal government to extend the Canada Emergency Business Account repayment deadline.
Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Roper. Any further discussion? Does staff have a good idea what it is we're expecting, and copies to both, well, I guess letters to both the government and the opposition? Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, please? Oh, all in favor? You were jumping the vote already. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, 9.5, the administration report 4523, which is the fourth quarter grant and aid requests. There is a report and a recommendation. Councillor Roper.
I'd be willing to make the motion that the four applicants for the 2023 fourth quarter grant and aid program be approved in principle.
Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Dickey. Discussion. I think the applications are all straightforward. This is the last intake. I think I did ask staff, well, because it takes the budget down to zero, that if there was another application that sort of came in ad hoc between now and the end of the year, we would just have to figure out where we might want to get the money from or something. Okay, good. Any other further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, there are how many bits of correspondence here? 1, 2. There are 5 pieces of correspondence for information. A letter from the Community Forest Limited Partnership, a letter from the Deputy Commissioner and Commanding Officer of the BCRCMP, a letter from the Secretary Treasurer of School District 81 on the Green Initiative, letter from Kathy Elric, President and CEO of Northern Health, and a letter from Rebecca Bishop, Program Officer at UBCM for 911 funding approval. I'll accept a resolution or a recommendation for information, unless somebody would like to pull one of those up. Okay,
I'll second it.
move for informations. Second by Councillor Souls, moved by Councillor Gerwing. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. For discussion at 10.6, we have a letter from Sarah Weber, the President and CEO of C3 Alliance, invitation to attend the annual Resource Breakfast Series, September 19th through to the 22nd. My experience with UBCM is that these are pretty good breakfasts. I learn as much here and have the opportunity to usually ask a question. There are lots of people, but sometimes you get a question in of a minister that's important for your municipality. I certainly would like to attend these, and I guess we'd be looking for authorization for anybody to attend. Who's going to UBCM?
I would like to attend that as well. I think that I too would second the idea that there's a different flavor in these kind of receptions. There's a more openness on the part of minister and interaction with people. And if you manage to get them cornered, you do have the option to have a conversation. So
thank you. Councillor Roper? Your mic's on, I thought. Oh, did you have a question? No? Okay. So Councillor Solzy making a recommendation that we're authorized to attend, that attendees at UBCM are authorized to attend the Resource Breakfast. Okay, do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Gerwing. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 10.7 is a letter from Leah Edmunds, Fort Nelson Literacy Society, a request for a letter, standing request. A request for a standing letter of support.
I'm the chair of the Literacy Society, so would you like me to remove myself?
Please, if you feel that there's conflict. We have quorum. Council's wishes. This looks pretty straightforward.
I'd move to support the letter.
Or to send to draft a letter.
Draft a letter.
standing letter of
Support to draft a letter.
Yeah. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Dickey. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, there are 5 council information packages there for us to receive for information. Moved by Councillor Roper, I see his hand up. Second by Councillor Dickey, I see you move your hand. I'm trying to speak. All in favor? All in favor of receiving those for information? Are there any opposed? Thank you. Those pass. 11 point. There's no additions. Oh, sorry, there was 11.4, which I put it. Committee of the whole availability. Let's bring that to this because that's where it should actually have been.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Just not that you need to race for your schedules right now or try to figure out what your availability is, but we do have a number of various items that we want to review with council over the coming weeks into the end of September. including the communication strategy. We have the grant group discussion, which is going to be a bit of a workshop that we're going to do with council. We got to follow up on some strategic planning stuff, continue that process. So just asking if you're going to be plan to be absent, if you can let us know. So either call or send an email to admin@Northern Rockies. And if there's any specific days of the week or times that don't work well for you, to let us know also, so that we can kind of start to firm up the requests and we try to secure some dates to get these committee the whole meetings going, because we only just have the one meeting until before UBCM. There's no second meeting in September, so we're looking at doing some additional meetings in the meantime, so we can get that get some of the stuff going here at summer's end.
And I think the policy that we need to develop around grants to community groups, which was a big issue for us at budget time, and budget's coming. And I think, you know, that's a meaty discussion on what that policy looks like going forward in the future. And so I think, you know, that we need to start that. We probably need to workshop that, you know, for several hours.
Yeah, it's going to be so.
Like, I don't think we can hit and miss it. I think we really
Yeah. So we right now we're looking at the calendar. I think the only day available closest to us right now is August 28th, correct, Jay? So we're going to reach out to council specific to that day, and exactly right, Mayor. It's a bit of a workshop. There's been a significant amount of work done on it in the background, but we don't want to say this is what it looks like and here it is. This is what it looks like. Let's discuss it and basically workshop it and adjust as necessary. So it's important that we get that done. And as the mayor said, I mean, it's, you know, budget time is going to hit us pretty quick here. Blinken will be working on it internally, and we want to make sure the budget process, and we want to make sure that we get that policy done and dusted to the best of our ability, and take the director and get some policy developed regarding it.
I think it gives us stability and really a process for how to deal with these. That's what I hope comes out of this. Councillor Gerwing?
So just a point of clarification, then you're wanting our availability from now until the end of September? Is that okay?
Yes, yeah, please, if you can. Yeah, and if there's any times of the week, because again, it's tough when we try to get everyone together, especially if we're trying to workshop something. So we'll reach out specifically about the 28th, but if there's any other no-go times for you, obviously UBCM week, we got 3 councillors going to that. But anything else outside of that, for what you know today, of course, things change, we know that. It just makes it a little easier when we try to firm up some dates.
I was just gonna add, we are trying, our intent is to try to get the whole group.
Yeah.
And I know that can be challenging with 7 different calendars and whatnot, but I think that the topics that we hope to discuss with council are significant enough that they deserve a full attendance and that full input. Because I find you don't necessarily get the progress you need when you are missing voices. So that's what we're aiming for anyway.
To the mayor's point, we don't want to piecemeal and hit and miss. You want to try to get as much time as you can and for that wholesome discussion.
Yeah, and because it's heavy enough, I think you need, you know, when you go away, you sort of lose some of the nuances of the things that you discussed the last time.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I think the strategic planning sessions worked well. I think they worked pretty good with respect to input by all of us and our staff. And so I think this is just as important to the community. I mean, it's big bucks, and it impacts a lot of different groups in the municipality. So it's pretty important to us. Good. Okay. 11.2 is ratification of the email poll for Councillor Enak's attendance for 2 tourism conferences, 1 a workshop in Fort St. John, and 1 is a tourism summit in Prince George. So a resolution to authorize attendance.
So
Moved by Councillor Gerwing, second by Councillor Roper. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I think the budget was there to look after that. I think that was in the email discussion. Good. 11.3, Councillor Gerwing attendance at the Coast Waste Management Association conference, which is virtual. So
there is an in-person, but it's for $700 plus travel and everything. So I feel that the virtual attendance would be sufficient. Yeah.
Okay. So you're looking for the cost to cover the virtual attendance?
Yeah, which is $195.
Right. Okay. Council's wishes? Moved by Councillor Dickey. Yeah. That we authorize attendance, second by Councillor Roper. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks.
And lately, the two seem to go pretty hand in hand. Oh, did I say that out loud? I think I did. That's okay. Standing item, are there any councillor reports? Councillor Vicky.
So last night we attended a meeting with the Real Estate Foundation of BC. I'm a governor on that board. I think it's really important that we connect with them. They did reach out to Jane to try and get on this agenda because they were in town for the annual celebration, but they have some funding that some of our groups could probably tap into. One is the community garden, and I'd really like to see that community garden come up with some sort of plan with engaging NARAs and women's societies and whoever wants to grow a garden, but make it a really viable project in the community and getting water resources to there. So they have funding for sustainable food projects, so they might be an option for next year. Because they couldn't get in the meeting tonight, they'd like to schedule a Zoom meeting if they could get on the agenda. And then the other thing was we went to the hospice walk through the new facility. And I'd really encourage council to take that hour out of your busy days. I know everybody's really busy, but take the hour out to go and attend these things because they put a lot of effort into hosting that. And there was just the three of us there and no other staff members or anybody attended. And so I think as community support, it's important that we attend these things. I know I've missed a few due to band business, but whenever you can, it was a short presentation. It was like half an hour, right?
But
So
it was
it was
still
very informative for me. We were talking about having starting to schedule community connection meetings because we don't see what everybody's doing. There's hospice, there's palliative care, there's the literacy society, there's health and wellness. There's all these programs that are going on that are not known to every community member. So even featuring them on our web page of this month it's hospice, or this week it's hospice, next week it's another nonprofit society. Just uplifting the work that they do because it's really important work in our community.
And I think it was you, Councillor Gerwing, that brought up the idea that unless people know about this, when they're in a tragic situation in their life or an emergency situation, they don't know what they don't know, and so they don't know to even ask for help. And so the more we can get the Hospice Society and the work that they do, which is a wide variety of work that they do with youth and seniors and palliative care, and they do an awful lot of work, and they get some funding, but it's not sustainable, I think. So sustainable funding, very, very, it's piecemeal and very directed at certain things, right? They don't get a chance to use the money for the things that they'd like to do, like a youth program, that sort of thing, or youth in distress, right? So anyways, it was very good. Is there anything else? So I attended those, and I also attended the celebration out at the reserve on the weekend, which was very, very good. I think there was a wide variety of presentations there, and always the moose camp where I get to eat moose and drink tea with folks that I haven't seen for a long time. It was really good opportunity to make some connections, and we got to see them dancing, and we got to participate in the dance, and we got to see the hand games again, and those are always exciting. So it was very good. I already said that I had attended the meeting of the Chamber of Commerce. We didn't have quite enough for quorum, but still it was a pretty good discussion, particularly around the issue that we dealt with tonight. And before that, I was pretty much on vacation. So, please.
So July 26th, I attended the local Trails Society meeting. On July 28th, I met with the new executive director of the Lamplighters, Karen Newmoon. This position is funded by that small grant that the NRM awarded this fiscal. So as a result, the programs and activities have increased along with applications to various grants. So I just really wanted to reiterate that small piece of money that we gave to them has allowed them to hire this position, and she's already applied for so many other grants. So it was just really rewarding to see that. August the 11th, I attended the BC Rural Health Network implementation meeting, of which we are a member, and they are currently seeking input from rural remote voices to understand the gap between rural community voices and decision-making at the health authorities and at the provincial level. So if you haven't already completed the survey, please do. And if you want a link, I'll email it to you, but I don't want to, if you're not interested, I don't want to like jam up your email. Also, could Diana or Jaylene or maybe somebody from staff complete this survey on behalf of the NRM? I completed it, but I'm just wondering if we haven't already, if some staff member could do that. Okay. And then also this network presented to the budget consultation process, and the subsequent report made the following recommendations to the province. So their voices were heard. And so I just want to quickly go over what the recommendations were. So ensure equitable access to healthcare services for rural and remote communities by funding community operated health centers. And that definition is really different than what we have been exposed to date. Expanding funding for and access to medical travel for rural and remote residents. Implementing recruitment and retention incentives for healthcare workers. Investing in digital health solutions. Providing funding to expand services for patient navigators. And shifting towards community-driven planning. So I felt that, I mean, we, like, our voices are heard. Like, these are all recommendations that we have been talking about or doing ourselves for years. So I was just really uplifted by seeing these recommendations, and other people around the province are speaking with the same voice. So
they're so common, the issues around the province.
Yeah. Oh, and one other one was in surgeries, invest in surgical day centers to expand care for day surgeries such as joint replacements. And I was at the hospice tour today. And then I just wanted to give you a brief update on Dr. Foury's intended July arrival has been further delayed due to a snag with Immigration Canada. To date, a new arrival date has not been confirmed, and this has left our doctors short again and having to cover extra on-call shifts while doctors are on holidays. So yeah, that's my update.
Thank you. Are there any others? Seeing none, we will move on. There's no outstanding business. There are no notice of motions. Is there anybody from the public or news on the, nobody's on? Okay. I think adjournment is in order. Moved by Councillor Roper.
No, actually, I had a question.
Sorry.
What's the process for gathering notice to motions? You just said there was none. How do you know we don't have one?
Oh, because it's not on it's not on here. So
Do we have to make that ahead of time at the beginning of the meeting?
I suppose not. I'll stand corrected. Do you have a
Okay.
notice motion?
I just assumed that at the end when we call for the notice. to
Okay,
motions,
I'm sorry.
Would it be okay if I?
Absolutely.
Notice motion? Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
That's it.
So Fort Nelson right now is disadvantaged from not having taxi service, and we're seeing this more and more. There's a whole rideshare economy out there, I think, just waiting for us. So I wanted to, at least start the discussion and gather some more information from staff, if it's agreeable, to find out what we have to do to get some of those approvals in place. I understand your municipality has to be approved for that sort of economy. So I'm just wondering how we go about that and what the benefits might be.
Okay, so is there a specific motion that you want to bring forward? Just a motion for staff to investigate? Is that
Just a motion
Okay.
to gather, get some more information on the rideshare economy and what it could mean for the municipality.
Okay, so that will come forward at the September meeting.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay.
Can I just make a
And I'm
comment on that?
sorry, I skipped over that. I should
Not at
have
all,
made a
not at all.
general- I should have made a
That's
general-
my first notice of motion, last 8 months. So it's still, we're learning, right?
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
Would that be something that we address at our strategic planning?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
yes.
question.
I don't think it would, I think we could more than likely do both, but I'm exercising my ability to make a notice to motion.
Yep.
If you disagree with it, that's
Yeah,
that's
and-
one thing, but we can do both. Absolutely.
And remember, we do have a study coming up, right? That's talking about
Yeah.
transportation and it may all become part of it.
Exactly.
They become a part of that.
Sure.
Okay, good. Are there any other notices of motion? See, learn my lesson there. If seeing none, we have nobody from the public, adjourn meeting is in order. Moved by Councillor Roper, second by Councillor Dickey. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I saw you put your hand up. We are adjourned.